to listen to the Lap Traffic Podcast.
What is up, Lap Traffic Nation? Welcome to episode 166 of the Lap Traffic Podcast. I am your host, the Professor Brandon Crowd, and man, does it feel good to be back behind the microphone. Man, almost forgot how to do this here, but here we are. So excited, kicking off season 4 of the Lap Traffic Podcast, and as I think you can tell, I am pretty excited about that. Let's get things rolling. Couple things. First, I apologize because I did not plan on taking this long of a break to crank things back up. But mid-late November, I mentioned it during the fantasy show a couple weeks ago that the wife and I decided to move. So we put our house on the market and found a house that we loved, and things happened very, very quickly right after Christmas. So, anybody that's moved, you know what kind of a pain it can be to pack up 10 years worth of stuff and move it. And so that's why things taken a little bit longer than usual to fire back up. But it's awesome. The new house is amazing. I have my own little podcast room in the basement, which is sweet. It's no longer part of the main basement, and I'm excited. It's decorated. Stuff is on the walls, and ready to kick things off. All right. So here's what I want to do tonight. A little unusual format, if you will, just because there's no racing to talk about yet. Anyways, that's occurred. We got some racing coming up this weekend. But tonight, our current Xfinity Series champ, Tyler Reddick, is going to be on to talk about his transition from Xfinity to Cup. Very excited to talk to him. Aaron Studwell will be back with the weather for the Clash. Got that tonight because, like I said, cars will be on the track this weekend. I want to talk some format changes coming to the show once racing gets underway. So I'll get you guys up to date on how things will shake out from a format standpoint. I want to recap some of your responses to the survey from the end of the year award show and all that good stuff. Recap the Fantasy League, which is still open and free for everyone to join. Have some fun with us if you're not already signed up. And then Sherwin from the PETM podcast is going to call in, and we're going to have some fun talking some silly season, reset what happened during the offseason, and all that good stuff. All right, so let's start things off with the format change for the season. Couple things that I'm switching up with the show that I think it would be fun. Same open as always. I like telling stories. So, when stories are fitting, I will obviously tell some stories, fit some interviews in there. Not much changing from that. Aaron Studwell and Brian Newdorf will rotate the weather, which is awesome. So Studwell will be on tonight. Both of them will be on next week because it's a big race, a 500. We'll get both their takes. And then Brian will be on the week after that and get a nice rotation there, hopefully. So there's that. Lucky Dog and Lap Down picks, of course, will be back, as well as the Wave Around hotline for you guys to leave your picks if you want to leave a message, and I'll play them back on the show. So that's what's staying. So what's changing? For me, I want to get you guys more involved with the show outside of just the Lucky Dog and Lap Down picks. Get more involvement from you guys, for actual race discussion. So, typically I try to live tweet at least one of the races each weekend, if not more, with PETM and all that good stuff. And so I want to interact more on social media from a discussion standpoint during the week. Tweet during the races, promote the show, but I want to be a little bit more involved in just discussion on social media, on Twitter. Obviously, that's the go-to there. And then bring some of your responses and stuff back and talk about them on the show. So I think that's going to be a good way to incorporate, recapping the races, is kind of get your guys' takes, read them, talk about them, and I think that'll be good. I think it'll be better to do that rather than, for example, run down standings. But if it makes sense to talk about the standings, then obviously talk about the standings. I want to focus on important takeaways from each race, each series, each race weekend, what was significant, how that will impact things going forward, albeit from a driver, team, manufacturer perspective, etc. One of the things you guys had mentioned on the survey for the end of the year awards last year was I asked you what would be the perfect show length, and two things, either 60 to 75 minutes was the common response, and also was give me all that you got. So a few times towards the end of last year, I pushed the two hour mark a few times. I love that aspect because there was so much content to give. But that's a lot for one show. And you guys also mentioned a bonus show once a month or once every 2 weeks. So I'm going to kind of sort of mash those two ideas together. Sometimes, I had 3 interviews in one show plus all of the other regular content that I like to do. So if that's the case this year, I'm just going to stretch that out over 2 shows, Tuesday and Thursday. That way it's not all in one show. If there's just something you want to, Thursday's show, if I do one, would probably maybe just be an interview, maybe a quick recap of something along those lines. But I think that will be good. Get a couple extra shows in there. Another thing that I'm playing around with is social media. Rather than just read off all that stuff, the show, the new followers, promotions, all that kind of stuff, I might just kind of plug those in throughout rather than just do it at one dedicated part in the show. So we'll see how that works. And the last thing that I want to talk about as pertains to the show, social media, you guys have been so awesome with the retweet and follow contests over the last few years. But I want to add some new giveaway ideas, some ideas that will not, only give options to everyone, but those who, interact with the show on a regular basis and all that. Try to get as many people something as possible as I can. So the retweet and follows, they'll still be there. Still got the 5,000 follower quarter panel giveaway, but some things that I've thought about doing to do giveaways around the show, maybe the first person to tweet who can tell me something that I said might win something. If you screenshot you're subscribed to the show, those are some things that I want to do to those that are regular listeners and interactors on social media. So we'll get some giveaways going here in the next week or two. Got some shirts and all that still left over from the fantasy prizes and all that. Ordered some extra stuff, so I was ready to go for the start of 2020. So be on the lookout for some new contests. Thank you to everything that you guys do as far as retweets and helping spread word on the show. All right, let's see here. I want to talk really quick about the 2020 Lap Traffic Fantasy League. The last show I published, episode 165, has the full rundown, breakdown of the rules. So here's what I'll say. The league's free to join. It's so much fun interacting with everyone on social media. This year, your cup selections are limited based on each segment. For example, I can only take Harvick once during segment 1. Another change, the final 4 this year will be reset to 0 heading into the last race. And rather than the segment leader calling in for picks, the person who had the previous week high will be eligible to call in and make your picks the following week. You can find the rules on the website, thelaptrafficpodcast.com. Click the fantasy link. Or to make it real simple, just shoot me an email with your name and email address to fantasylaptraffic@gmail.com. And the best part is, if you played last year, you don't need to do anything. You're already registered. I copied everything over, and you guys are good to go if you played last year. I want to get 100 players. I think we're up to 75-ish. So if we get 25 more before the 500, I think that would be awesome. So tell your friends, get registered. Check it out on the website, thelaptrafficpodcast.com. All right, that's enough of my rambling. Let's get Mr. Tyler Reddick on the line. All right, Lap Traffic Nation, joining me on the line, making his 7th appearance on the Lap Traffic podcast. He is the driver of the number 8 Chevy with Richard Childress Racing. He is a back-to-back and the current Xfinity Series champion and about to make his run for Rookie of the Year in the Cup Series. Welcome back to the show, Tyler Reddick. Tyler, what's up, man? How are you?
Just getting ready to head down to Daytona for Speed Weeks and get this roller coaster rolling, I guess. Get this madness on the road.
That's probably a really good way to describe it, a roller coaster, because it's a long season. There's a lot of ups and downs to a season. So I think that's a pretty good way to describe that there. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, how was your off season? Did you get to do anything fun before you got back to the shop and all that?
Oh, the off season flew by. I mean, it felt like it took almost a month for my schedule to finally calm down, where I was home for more than 2 days during the week, and that just made it really difficult to settle in and really feel the off season come to us. And I never really had the sensation of off season being here, so that was challenging. But a lot of good things were going on. We were doing a lot of these things were happening because we were having success in the Xfinity Series. And then after that, with my son coming into the fold on the 18th
Which
of January.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, with him coming into the fold, the week before, the week and a half before is just kind of up in the air. You're just waiting to wake up or get a call that you need to head home and then head to the hospital. So, that crazy, it's a whirlwind of emotions, and so much is. This doesn't feel like an off season, and now we're sitting here. It's the 3rd, and gosh, I leave for Daytona, and I leave for Daytona in 2 days.
That's
so
crazy.
It's here. Off season never really existed.
That's nuts. How's diaper duty? Are you got that under control?
For the most part, they're just diapers, quick on, quick off. A little messy at times, but if you change them frequently, they're not too bad. And you get used to it. You get used to the smell, the sights, the sounds. I mean, he's a little human being, and he needs your help every step of the way at this point. And I've just got to do the best I can to give him whatever he needs.
That's awesome. Tyler, you and I talked a couple times last season. One of the things we talked about was how awesome it was for your team to be able to conquer the challenges of a new team and to come out with such a successful year last year early on, and that carried you to the championship. Talk about what that meant for you personally to be able to conquer something that no one's ever done in the Xfinity Series, which is back-to-back with 2 different teams.
It was really wild, and probably more than anything, that wasn't necessarily a thought that was heavily on my mind. I was just very excited for all the folks at RCR to win Xfinity Series championship on the 50th year of the team. Was great. I mean, just a lot of amazing people here at this organization that I just really enjoy racing for. And it was kind of, as much as winning back-to-back was nice for me and my family and my personal goals, it was more about getting that championship for this organization and all the folks here that put in a lot of work and go above and beyond to make things happen. So that was honestly probably what was more rewarding than anything. That's bad. It's nice to hear when I get old one day. Who knows if somebody else will come along and do that, but it's kind of nice to know that I'll be one of the few in NASCAR and the only one in the Xfinity Series at this time to have done it. So we'll see how that holds up, but nevertheless, it's still really cool to think about and think, wow, gosh, not many people have been able to do this.
Absolutely. No, that's cool. One other thing that I kind of think is a unique comparison or a unique perspective that you're going to be able to have. Last year, 2 different teams in the same series. This year, same organization, but a switching from Xfinity to Cup. Can you compare what the 2 different off seasons have been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, for the last, 3 years prior to this, the off season's been transition with life, with where I'm going to work, who I'm working with. So it's been very challenging, very difficult. the nice thing is, throughout a lot of it, I've been able to work out with, one of my trainers, Curtis Walls. He's done a great job with me and helped me through all these transitions. And now we're both at RCR, same home. He's helped me through a lot of that, and that's been nice to have. He's been a constant through a lot of this. My girlfriend, now I have my son. What's nice though is this time around, with the move up, a lot of the team I had on the Xfinity side with the 2-car will be going up with me, and the other people that are stepping in to fill the spots that we had to fill and put different people in. I'm familiar with them from being in the shop, so really, really excited for the capability and the possibilities and the opportunity our group has. But it's huge. The Cup Series step is a huge one to take, and you can't take it lightly. You have to work hard. You can't expect any of this to just come easy to you.
Sure. As fans,
we're excited for that.
As fans last year, we had a blast watching you, Cole Custer, and Bell dominate the Xfinity Series. It's really fitting, I think, that all three of you are moving up together for one of the strongest rookie classes in the Cup Series in a while. Talk about the camaraderie that you three have as friends on the track, off the track. 3 different organizations, 3 different manufacturers, but the 3 young bloods, if you will, walking into the upperclassmen halls now. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Cole and I have gotten to know each other really well off the racetrack for the last couple of years. But Christopher, I've known him somewhat. I've known who he is. He's known who I have. We've never really necessarily been very close friends, but we know each other pretty well at the racetrack. And racing against him, Christopher kind of came in, had the shorter, faster path to the Cup Series, just purely because he's done so well and everything he's gotten in. And it was really cool. Yesterday I got to be at me and my girlfriend Alexa got to be at Christopher and Morgan's wedding, and yeah, it's really cool to see all these good things happening for Christopher, for Cole, and it's really exciting that we all get to race against each other in the Cup Series. So Christopher and I talk quite a bit when we're at the racetrack, strictly about racing. But he's just always so locked into racing. That's what he loves, and that's what he lives for. And I have a lot of respect for that because I can relate in a lot of ways.
That's awesome. You ran the 500 last year, so you got your feet wet a little bit. But how are you mentally preparing for the 500 to get through and survive that race?
Well, I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong approach to the race, but you just gotta be in the right spot at the right time. And as crazy as it sounds, you have 500 laps, and you have a lot of decisions to make over the 500 laps. Excuse me. You have 500 miles, and over the course of those 200 laps, you have a lot of decisions to make on restarts, on pit road, under caution, saving fuel, or getting your tires warmed up, or whatever it is you're doing. You have a lot of decisions to be made over the course of 500 miles, and you pretty much have to make every correct decision for each of those 200 laps, each of those 500 miles. And that's a lot of decisions to make over a long period of time. And that's all you got to do, just make every right decision. I mean, you're going to come face with a lot of them, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just a matter of being there at the end of the race, and then, getting in position, surviving to be in position, and then from there, just surviving. And just, you gotta just just hold on at the last 3-4 laps, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Right. So you make it sound so easy.
Well, I mean, it's funny. A lot of people like to say luck is involved, but there's a reason the same guys have won so many of these races on the super speedways. Is because they know what they're doing.
Sure.
It takes a little bit of everything. There's a lot of different approaches to it, and we've seen them all play out. So, hopefully my approach is the right one in February.
I'll be rooting for you. All right, I got one more for you to get you out of here. Last time we talked last year, it was right after your Bristol win, and you were getting done cutting your grass. So 2-time now Xfinity Series champion, embarking on the Cup Series. Are you still going to be cutting your own grass this year?
Well, my grass has all been dead right now, so I need to kind of focus on getting it to grow first. I tried that. I'm going to be very busy with my son and Cup racing. I might have someone come out and try and get the dead ground to grow. I still would like to cut it, but depending on how that whole deal gets bundled up, it might only be a couple dollars more for them to cut it. So I might let them cut every now and again, but I got to get grass growing first before I can cut it. So right now that's the issue I'm looking at.
I love it. Tyler, where can everybody follow you at on social media?
Just at my name. It's pretty simple. Nothing fancy. Just TYLERREDDICK, Tyler Reddick, and you should be able to find me on pretty much everything except TikTok. Maybe I'll get both set up with TikTok here soon.
I don't even know.
He's about in that age range already.
I don't even know what that is. All right, Tyler. Lap Traffic Nation, big thanks to the driver, number 8 with RCR, Tyler Reddick. Thanks so much for calling in. Good luck this year. Good luck at the 500, and I'm sure we'll talk later in the season, man.
Absolutely.
Lap Traffic Nation, how cool was that? Tyler Reddick calling in to hype up Daytona. Very excited to watch Tyler, Christopher, Custer. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what those boys can do in the Cup Series. Something tells me they're not going to be winning 8 and 9 races, but I definitely think they're going to have a great first year. I think those guys are ready. They weren't rushed up too quickly, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch those guys. It's always great talking to Tyler. He's been a big supporter of the show. He's been on 7 times. Absolutely love it. Something tells me we'll have him on a couple more times as well. All right, Lat Traffic Nation. Let's get right into it. Let's get Mr. Aaron Studwell on the line. See what the weather's going to be like for this weekend at Daytona for the Clash. All right, Lap Traffic Nation, it's time for some weather. Joining me on the line, back for another season of weather on the Lap Traffic Podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at RaceWeather. Mr. Aaron Studwell, sir, take 2 here. Little ring rush shaking off, but how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. It is great to be back, and it's great to, we've had some good racing the last couple weekends. Chili Bowl, then, for some of the road racing fans, Bathurst 12 was actually on YouTube, and I caught the end of that. Actually, it was raining towards the end, so I actually did some weather updates on that from Australia. The race was in Australia. I was not in Australia.
I was going to say.
And I'm back.
Yes. That's good. Things are good, everything, all that good stuff.
Yeah, on track with the dissertation, still planning on a May graduation, and life's good. Life's on track.
Fantastic, sir. Glad to hear that. It's been a minute since we've talked some sports on the air, so we might as well kick things off with a little Michigan basketball. After a strong start to the season, getting as high as, 2nd in the rankings, Michigan has fallen out of the rankings, some tough losses, struggling a bit here midway through the season.
Yeah, I was looking at the standings before. They're tied for 11th in the Big Ten.
Yeah, that's great.
Wait a minute. They're tied for 11th in the Big Ten. Got it.
Yep. And they got a couple tough matchups. They got Ohio State tonight and Michigan State on Saturday.
Yeah, and I just, kind of running through the numbers. Even with this little bad streak they've been on with Livers out, but they're 4-6 in the Big Ten. They've really, every game's going to matter going forward from here. But even with all that, and I didn't realize this, their strength of schedule is 3rd worst, 3rd hardest in the nation. In their KenPom rankings, they're still 26, and the ESPN Power Index is 31. So they're still looking at the tournament. They're not a bubble team. There are tons of bubble teams.
Yeah, no, definitely.
They're not one. Yeah.
Yes, no, I'm with you there. And some other Big Ten news out of the East Lansing area today with a surprising retirement of Mark D'Antonio. Yeah,
it's funny. We were talking before you hit whichever button you hit up there. And
I hit a lot because it didn't work right away.
And my son texted me. He's like, "Oh, just see D'Antonio had resigned." I'm like, "No, what's going on?" Well, they said it was family. Then, 5 minutes later, he texted me the headline from the Detroit News. Oh, interesting timing after the Blackwell allegations. Go spend time with family and maybe a little time with the judge.
Well, maybe, yeah. See, I tell you, it's not a matter of if people get caught in NCAA lately, it's a matter of when. Like, it just seems like everybody at some point in time, a school's going to come out with some type of violation that's, not just a slap on the wrist kind of penalty. It's, and that's just, the level of competition just because of the hype, the recruitment, trying to get it's the focus is crazy.
This was a new one on me, though. This is the first time I've ever heard of parents having employment arranged by alumni and well-paid alumni in the program. And maybe I'm just a little sheltered.
Well, I distinctly remember that allegedly that Harbaugh did something like that, didn't he? He gave like a gym coach a job or a high school coach or something like. I mean, that wasn't quiet.
But they hired him in with the program.
Okay.
So they actually gave him a title. But this is where the parents of a recruit, and I'm pretty sure the student athlete went to Michigan State, wound up getting a job through, and I don't remember the name of the gentleman. He's a high dollar alum. His name's on the practice facility at Michigan State. Actually arranged jobs, plural, for that student athlete's parents.
Ah, okay.
So it was the family receiving the benefits. So the only analogy I came up with would be Reggie Bush's family getting the house.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, man, that's muddy waters right there. That's for sure.
Yeah. All that being said, I do expect to see Coach D'Antonio either in the Big Ten Network or FS1 this fall.
Absolutely. I mean, why not, right?
He's got a great record. He's a strong speaker, and he's got a lot of experience. And
absolutely.
If some people can still get hired and keep jobs in the college football world, I don't see why he shouldn't.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. All right, Lap Traffic Nation, real quick before Aaron gets to the weather for this weekend, just to give you guys a little update. I mentioned it at the top of the show. So Aaron's on tonight and next week because it is the Daytona 500, big race, one of the crown jewels, of course. Both Brian and Aaron will be on next week, and then Brian the week after, and hopefully we can keep a nice rotation, and for the big ones, have you both on. I think that is going to work out nicely.
Yeah, I think so as well. I'm definitely up for rotating and sharing, and it's always good to share the mic with Mr. Newdorf, and we'll keep going forward and make it as successful as we can.
I absolutely love that. All right, sir, let's get to work. What's coming up weather-wise this weekend?
Friday, we have a cold front passing through early in the morning, so we're going to see morning showers and thunderstorms. We do have 2 ARCA practices, both in the afternoon. One's at 1:30, so we're going to see PM clearing skies, but increasing winds. The practice may be a little delayed if the track stays a little bit wetter than we think, but we just have the 2 afternoon ARCA practices, and things should be good by the afternoon. High of 66, low of 58. Northwest winds 15 to 20 miles per hour with higher gusts. So if you're there, hold on to your hats.
Nice.
Saturday, we have Cup practice and Clash practice and the Lucas Oil 200. I believe that's a 4 o'clock start Eastern. Mostly sunny skies. High of 68, low of 44.
All right.
We'll wrap it up on Sunday. Cup qualifying and then the Clash. Mostly sunny skies. Increasing afternoon winds. They'll be from the northeast at 10 to 15. High of 72, low of 50. So definitely once we get past this bit of rain on Friday morning, this will be a great weekend in Daytona.
That's fantastic. Absolutely love to hear that. Hopefully you and Brian get to bring about the same kind of news next week. Hopefully we get the duels and all that good stuff. So
that is one of my favorite. I'll put it this way: when I was working, I would make sure I have the day off to watch the duels.
Yep. Yeah. There were a couple times in class I would stream it on my computer, and just have yep, sorry, I'm watching the duels.
And they're as much fun as the 500. I mean, just, the short races, and people are really racing for something here. They want to make it in. And then you also see these, these term back markers. They're not starting parkers anymore, but kind of the latter part of the field, really competing to get into the 500, and how much that means to all those drivers.
Absolutely. Alrighty, sir. Well, it was good to have you back for the kickoff here, and excited to work with you and Brian for the season here. Everybody, make sure you follow Aaron on Twitter at RaceWeather and on the web at raceweather.net. Sir, great to talk with you. We'll talk soon and talk to you next week, man.
Great to be back. Thanks for everything. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. We'll see you. All right, Lap Traffic Nation. Always great to catch up with Aaron Studwell, and definitely look forward to him and Brian both next week to set the weather for the 500 and the race weekend next weekend. But right now, joining me on the line for the lucky 13th appearance on the Lap Traffic Podcast, you can follow him on Twitter at Pregame Engineer and at the PETM Podcast, Mr. Andrew Sherwin. What's up, dude?
Skew! What's up?
What's going on? How are you, man?
I'm good, dude. Weather finally turned around down here. It was like damn near 70 degrees today.
Oh, man.
I got short sleeves on.
We got all the way up to 50 yesterday, which was nice. But they're calling for about 5-6 inches of snow tomorrow night. So,
Well, it comes with the territory, I suppose.
That it does. All right. This kind of got put together here, a little impromptu, when you found out of the blue that, unfortunately, Rusty was going to be out of town last minute. So thanks for calling on and being on the show, man.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you bailing me out.
Absolutely.
Obviously, we always want to be on. This is not a scheduled off week. I found out at 12:30 yesterday that Rusty was going to have to travel and wouldn't be back till like Friday. So it wasn't like we could try to do a Thursday show.
Sure.
So it was a full on cancellation.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm glad it works out because now you and I can talk a little off season and I don't have to talk to myself, and we'll be good to go. So in honor, as always, whenever you guys are on, in honor of the PETM podcast, sir, what are you drinking tonight?
I'm misbehaving tonight.
Yeah?
Yeah. I got a glass of Merlot, and then at some point during this show, I'm going to be sipping on this little shot glass full of Fireball.
Excellent. That's a combination right there. Red wine and some Fireball.
Yeah, they actually it works.
Excellent.
It's
I believe
good.
That. I believe that. All right, man. So here's what I was thinking we do. I want to talk some changes that have been announced for all three series, and I've been a little MIA, as I told everyone at the top of the show, with the move, but ready to get things going in full gear. So just comment on a couple things there and talk some driver changes and all that good stuff, and just kind of what we think might happen and all that good stuff. Does that sound good there, sir?
Yeah, it does. And we probably have to be careful how many of the things that changed that we actually address, because you know me, I'm long form, and
right.
It might get a little out of hand how much we talk about it.
Well, let's dive in. Let's get silly. Let's talk a little silly season stuff. I want to start off with some of the series changes across all three series. We've got some changes here, and I want to start off with something that's going to get me a little heated, and it damn near pissed me off when I heard this. And I tell you what, I heard it on listening to your guys' show about the change to the truck playoffs has literally got me irked. Like I said, a little behind with everything, and that was the first I heard of it, and I don't like the add of 2 more truck drivers to the playoffs, and I'm going to tell you why I don't like this. And before I tell you why, I want to ask you a question to see if you know the answer to this. So there's 23 truck races. Do you know, because I know I have it written down here, do you know how many teams ran all 23 truck races last year?
I want to say 13.
11 teams ran all 23 truck races. So you're now going to have 10 truck drivers in the playoffs. All you basically have to do is just run every race, and you're going to make the playoffs. And that is just oversaturation, in my opinion. I think it was perfect. You know, the argument can be made, well, it's only 2 more. And I get that it's only 2 more. But in a field that does not run the same teams week in and week out, I think that's oversaturation of the playoff field. You had guys like Ben Rhodes, Harrison Burton, Todd Gilliland, you know, Spencer Boyd, who even won but didn't run the playoffs. The level of competition in the Truck Series in 2019 was incredible. I absolutely loved it, and I just think this is it's too much.
Well, I think there's a wild difference in, like, can somebody show up, run an 8 or a 10 race schedule, and win a race? Absolutely, especially now that we've eliminated, you know, a significant number of races that the Cup guys are allowed to run. I think they're only allowed to run 3, and that's only if they have less than 5 years of experience. And I may be crossing over into Xfinity land, but I'll stick with the trucks because I know you're going to have an Xfinity conversation coming up.
You got it.
but I would have been a lot more excited about them reducing it by 2,
Sure,
making it only 6 trucks.
Yep.
Because of the exact point that you made, and I think I did or Rusty might have done the homework on it only being 11 teams that ran a full time. I think you're right. It's like, I don't know why you would want to put basically every truck that runs a full schedule into a playoff scenario. Like, you should, like, why have a regular season if that's what you're going to do?
Yep. No, that's exactly my point. You know, you look at Major League Baseball, 162 games that they play in the regular season, and only 8 teams make the playoffs. Like, all of that work, that level of competition, to where, you know, we lost a series. Well, maybe you lost that series and missed the wild card by 1 game. You know, this is literally. I didn't know NASCAR. I'm gonna say it. I didn't know NASCAR was in the business of handing out participation playoff spots, because that's, to me, what it feels like.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you throw in those play-in games, then you got a couple more teams that have at least some kind of weird shot at getting in there. But you have 30 teams,
yeah,
and they all play 162 games. Yep. Like, you can't just go, yeah, I mean, the Tigers and the Braves aren't going to play this week because they don't have sponsorship. Yeah. Nah, it doesn't work that way in stick and ball.
Yep. But yeah, so that's where we're at. I am not a fan of that change. You know, maybe my opinion will change as we get closer. But I think they're just handing them away. In my opinion, every series needs to reduce the playoff drivers. I think 8 was good. I'd be happy with 6. I think 12 is too many for Xfinity. I think 8 to 10 would work. And 16, damn near half the Cup field makes the playoffs, which is just it's asinine, because there's not a legitimate shot for 16 guys to go out there and win. You know, you look at the NFL playoffs that we had, you know, there was a legit shot. Any one of those teams could have made it to the Super Bowl at least, you know. That's not the case. So why are we oversaturating the market here with 16 guys in the Cups?
Well, I think it's putting a magnifying glass on the anomalies that are associated with all these different situations, like the anomaly of Arizona making the playoffs as a wild card team and playing the Steelers. I don't know, it's been 10 years now probably. And then you look at the Ravens, had to win 4 games on the road just to get a shot at the AFC title, which they did not win. And I think those are not – I don't think those are the focal points that you want. You don't want the anomaly. I mean, we looked at – you know, Crafton won the championship without winning. Newman almost did it, about 5 years ago. And I think they're pointing – that data point doesn't mean nearly as much as like the average. It's like they forgot how to do statistics.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you there 100%. All right. A change that's going to be impacting both Truck and Xfinity, and then we'll switch over to Xfinity. The restriction on pit stops at tracks where the Cup Series will not be running, mainly happening at road courses. I think Iowa's thrown in there as well. My initial thoughts when I first heard this, I didn't like it, because I thought I think it could make things a little bit more predictable on the road courses, which is something I know they've been trying to get away from with the stages. So curious to see how this pans out, if teams risk having to start at the back by taking 4 tires or coming down twice and all that. I know you guys talked a little bit about it on the show last week, but recap that for us.
Yeah, well, I think the smart people that are paying attention to what's going on understand that Goodyear doesn't have enough time to change the tire. And those 3 series run essentially the same tire. And that helps Goodyear not have to do nearly as much R&D. But the problem is they haven't figured out how to limit what these teams are doing with these tires, because they're using them as shocks now. Now that we have the splitter, and when you're running wide open, the truck, the car, they're laying on the ground, which means you no longer have front shocks. So the only way to build in rebound is to use the tire, which means they're using way too much low air pressure. And NASCAR doesn't want people to be failing tires, particularly not at places like Michigan, which we have seen a lot of in the last half decade.
Yep.
And because those are really fast places, and we don't want to hurt our drivers. And so I'm not sure what to say about it. I think what this really does, though, so there's a flip side to this. It's actually a positive. The positive to this side of the equation is that, a mid-level Xfinity team or a truck team no longer has to fly in a development cup pit crew to pit their vehicles. But if they don't get Goodyear on board with making sure these tires wear out, nobody's going to come back in for that. If they took lefts or if they took rights and gassed up, to come back in and potentially start, I don't know, in these races, how many trucks are actually on the lead lap at the end of the race? Maybe 12, maybe 13.
Sure. But
if the tire's too hard, it doesn't matter if you get all 4 tires.
Yeah, because you don't need them, and that's, we've had that issue with, we've had it for the last couple of years, and the only time we seem to really enjoy, good fall off is on, weathered tracks. Atlanta, your home track, the tire, no matter how hard they bring it, that track is going to wear that tire down. But like Michigan, it's been repaved for almost 10 years now. That track has not broken in at all, so tires aren't, there's no fall off.
Well, and to your point there, and I'll harken back to what I previously said is, Michigan was definitely one of the tracks that NASCAR went to Goodyear and said, we can't blow tires here because we go too fast.
Yep.
And I think that's a lot to do with, the motor changes we saw last year at the bigger tracks. I'm sure we'll get into that, so I won't delve into it. But, if the tire doesn't wear, then the driver doesn't really have a lot of options other than to lead the race, which is incredibly challenging to do, as we've seen. And I really thought, Nate Ryan published a podcast on Monday that he did with Denny Hamlin. And despite the fact that Rusty and I will repeatedly give Denny Hamlin a hard time just because we don't really like him as a race car driver, we always said he's good. Same thing with Kyle. People give me crap about that all the time. But he said he made a really good point about the fact that the tire has to fall off because it's not about downforce. It's about how much wake does the lead car create. And they're the only ones that actually get the goodie out of the tire. So they take off and leave everybody.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's you look at some of the mile-and-a-half tracks. If Kevin Harvick's out front at Atlanta, he's leaving everybody in the dust. If Kyle Busch is out front at any track, he's leaving him in the dust. If Kyle Larson's out front at Michigan, he's going to leave him in the dust because they don't have to worry about managing that tire because it's not a concern. They can just pedal to the metal and Good luck.
And what I would say is the guy out front actually, what he does have or she does have somewhat of an ability to manage the tire, but nobody behind them can.
Right.
Because they're just like, I'm chasing this guy, and I can't, the guy out front actually, regardless of whether or not he wears his tires more, gets more air to the tires. So they get cooled off at the same time that they might be wearing them and finding the goodie based on the line they like to run. And that's the reason why they run off and leave everybody.
Yep. No, I hear you there. All right. Another change in the Xfinity series here. They are going to run the road course at Indy. There's no denying that Indy weekend needs a little something to spice it up. I'm not opposed to this, but as I'm not opposed to it, I think NASCAR needs to be really careful in letting Rovals be the end all be all for tracks that aren't drawing attendance figures.
Yeah, and I forgot to look at the schematic. I only saw part of it earlier, and I got distracted. But they're also going to run. They're going to cross outside the backstretch and come back in, or they're only running the internal roval.
I thought it was just the internal.
I think you're right about that. The only thing I would say there is, I'm not sure I understand how that's going to put more butts in the seats. I mean, they've obviously been struggling ever since they sent Xfinity to the big track. And we know why it happens. Gluck and Junior and everybody else have talked about how being at the big track just draws more attention from sponsors. And that helps these race teams, with their own personal internal revenue. But I would agree with every other person that said you got a perfectly good short track right across the street.
Right.
Why wouldn't you run IRP or O'Reilly or whatever we're calling it now, Lucas Oil, whatever the hell it is now. Yeah. It's IRP. It's Indianapolis Race Park.
Yes.
It's like a 6/10. It's got a super abrasive surface. People have always loved that race. And if you put 25,000 fans in that, that's a small place. They're not going to put 25,000 people in the big track for that race.
No. And if they do, it's not gonna look like 20,000 people. It's gonna look like 2,000 people.
Well, they're gonna have to be very selective with how they approach TV coverage, especially from the helicopter.
Yeah.
Because they don't want you to see that nobody's there. Yeah. Now, the difference is the infield at Indy is pretty neat. While I haven't seen a NASCAR race on the road course or even an IndyCar race, I have spent an entire weekend inside the infield there. And if they could ever generate that kind of energy, which I don't think they ever will, because 400,000 people is a lot of energy, but being there and just being able to walk around, you can walk on the golf course, and the ability to, stake a chair up next to one of the corners, that may be of intrigue.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, whatever they can do to try to get people there. I don't want, they only go there once a year. I don't want Indy, and I don't think it would be in jeopardy of losing a date. But, I guess that's where I would ask the question, NASCAR, this has been going on year after year here. When are you going to do something to make the quality of racing at that track a little bit better? And who knows? Maybe with the new car, maybe we'll get that. But I don't see any change this year.
They certainly have been able to generate good open wheel racing at that racetrack, particularly in the last half decade. Although I think last year, despite who won, may have been something of a dud compared to the last 3 or 4 that we saw. But there's a reason why 400,000 people started coming back to that racetrack, even though, because they went through their own downturn where the stands looked completely empty, not like Xfinity empty, but compared, you still looked around, you saw a lot of aluminum. Now you don't really see any at all for that race. I don't know. Maybe with Roger Penske being involved in the promotion, that somehow changes things. They just announced that the sponsor for that, the title sponsor for that Xfinity race is going to be Pennzoil, and it's kind of like, duh.
You think?
Like, I mean, that's not. It's nice of them to announce that's a sponsorship. It's not. It's a continuation of a business-to-business partnership.
Right.
And I don't know how much oil Pennzoil sells to the everyday guy running around with his pickup truck, but we all know now that these B2B sponsorships are completely related to, especially with Roger, it's all his trucks.
Right.
He's putting Pennzoil in all his trucks. He's putting Pennzoil in all of the cars that he sells on his dealership lots. Those don't really feel like consumer products the way, for instance, I'll use Jimmy Johnson and Lowe's as an example. Alone is not really a consumer product, but a big box store with all kinds of little things that you need to buy to live your everyday life, like weed eaters and grills and hammers and paint, like that's much more of a consumer type deal.
Yeah, no, I totally get where you're coming from with that in terms of, what the consumer actually thinks and can, it's physical presence. You can actually physically go in and hold and bring home that hammer with you. Just because he's putting Pennzoil in a car that you bought off the lot, you as the consumer to that are separated, by a, middleman there, so to speak.
Yeah, you're not really. I mean, I'm sure there are absolutely people that go to any of the auto parts stores we're all aware of, Advance, O'Reilly, whatever, or even at your local Walmart, and they're changing their own oil, and they're saying, I want to buy Pennzoil because I am a Roger Penske and a Penske racing fan. That's definitely part of the equation, but
sure.
it's not the equation. It's like every time Rick Hendrick makes a deal with an oil company. It was Quaker State for a while. It's back to being Valvoline. Roush had Valvoline before, and he had that whole souping up cars, business before Roush became what it is now, which who knows what that is. But, it's just, you have to be careful. I think, I actually think what JTG Doherty, what Tad and Jody and Brad are doing with their involvement with Kroger is actually more effective in gaining consumer interest because they're able to put brands like Huggies and Pampers and Kleenex and whatever the hell that you could go buy at a Kroger. They could put that on the car, even though it's still more of a B2B type relationship. What you see on the car is something that you can actually just, you can just leave your house right now and go buy.
Yep. I am with you there, sir. But yeah, like you said, I'd be curious to see, the involvement of Roger there and how that influences things for sure. All right, let's talk a little cup change. Something that I'm actually excited about. It's not at all the races. It's only for some of them, but I think some's better than none. The adjustment to the stage lengths at a few races. I don't mind stage racing. When they announced it a few years ago, I thought they did it backwards. To me, it would have made more sense for the first stage to be the longer stage with two shorter stages at the end. And I say that because I know the notion and the goal behind stage racing is to keep things interesting. So apparently no one from NASCAR wants to listen to me about not counting caution laps at stage breaks, but, apparently I just had to talk to the right person.
Skew on that for sure.
But I am excited that they're, kind of shortening up that third stage a little bit. Then, go back to Michigan, for example. 50 laps stage 1, 50 laps stage 2, and then 100 laps at a 2-mile track like Michigan. It becomes a fuel mileage, and it becomes stretched out. And that's not their goal.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And so I will applaud them on this. And I said this on our show. What I will applaud them for is using opportunities to basically test a concept with all 40 cars on the racetrack. So at least you can gather some data around what impact this is going to have. I don't know if you're planning to talk about the crew reduction at the racetrack because I think this plays in.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
There's a bridge there that having less people at the racetrack is probably going to, it's going to lend itself to these situations where for a fact that like you're only going to have to do one green flag pit stop at the end in the last segment. That's kind of what their mindset was, at least based on what I read.
Yep.
Is not, they want to push the crew a little bit further away from impacting the race, which I think is a little weird. But like I said, I will give them credit for at least trying something that's wildly different. Like we just talked about with the trucks and Xfinity. They're going to get 7 races of data to figure out, is this 2 tires and then 2 more tires if you want them thing going to work? How much fuel do you need? All those things are going to come into play with these concepts. I'm just glad they didn't make a blanket change so that they'll never understand what the data really means.
Well, like you said, if they were to do that, then like you said, they don't understand statistics because you can't compare it to anything. So if you do it to all of it, then you don't have anything to compare back to. So no, I'm with you there. I think with the crew changes, I think that just kind of gets into, like you said, it's a little weird. The crew guys are a part of the team. Pit stops are a part of the race. We've seen countless times Kyle Busch's pit crew has won him more than one race last year alone. And from that side of things, I think we complain a lot that, it's all just, pedal to the metal, hold it wide open, and, we don't like that style of racing, so to speak. So at least with the pit crew, that added an element of change to the leader. It added a different element to potentially who could win the race. So I'm all for pit crew guys impacting the race, whether it be from a penalty standpoint or being, from having that great pit stop that gets you the lead and the win.
Yeah. So my perspective is, I think, unfortunately, NASCAR has talked out of both sides of their mouth again on this because they say they want drivers to have impact and they want this to be a team sport. Well, if Kyle Busch if his crew gets him out front for a restart, we all know Kyle Busch is the best restarter in the sport. Why shouldn't he be able to capitalize on that skill?
Absolutely. I mean, everybody's getting a paycheck.
It's which way do you want it? You can't. I don't know that they're going to be able to meld it into having it both ways. I think that's a lot of what we saw with all the the spoiler changes last year is you kind of numbed the sport a little bit just in an effort to keep more cars on the lead lap. And I don't even think they were able to do that with significance. I didn't do the statistics. David Smith from Motorsports Analytics probably has all kinds of interesting things to say about that because he's probably done all the work. So you should definitely listen to the Positive Regression podcast because that's where you'll hear somebody who really knows what they're doing with statistics. Really, NASCAR sabermetrics is kind of what he does. But they're saying one thing and then they're saying another thing, and they want it to meet in the middle, and I'm not sure how it's going to do that, because the way we wanted to differentiate the top levels of NASCAR, Cup, Xfinity, and then the trucks, is that pit stops matter. There's more people involved. It's more of a team sport. And then at the late model and maybe even the K&N level and the ARCA now that K&N and ARCA are basically the same thing, you're not paying these guys an exorbitant amount of money until actually they get stolen from you to go to like Hendrick and Joe Gibbs combines as development teams. I think what's happening with a lot of this is they want to prevent teams from feeling like they have to fly in and for a weekend contract purchase a Hendrick or a Joe Gibbs 5th or 6th or even 7th development team because they think that's what they need for finishing positions. So I don't know how you meet in the middle on this.
Yeah, no, from a team standpoint, you don't want to spend the money on doing that. NASCAR wants teams to try to save as much money as possible, so that some of these teams might be able to get out of the red and look to the black a little bit here from a bottom line perspective. But like you said, how do you meet that in the middle and get that sweet spot to where it matters, but it's not as maybe important as they maybe think it shouldn't be. I think they should be. I think pit stops should be important. I think they should have and play, a pivotal role in the race. But to your point, like you said, to fly in a team, to show up on Saturday for an Xfinity race and then fly back out, that's got to be pretty costly for some of these teams.
I would imagine it's probably even more expensive than the tires they might buy for 2 or 3 weeks.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how we reconcile this in order. I think the end goal for all these decisions is they want more middle teams. And I thought I heard some cool things being said in the race world that the way they've approached some of these decisions is this is going to bring back the middle team, and sort of bring the herd back together. But at the same time, how do you tout, well, it's all about the drivers in this sport? Well, not really.
No, it can't. I don't, like you said, it's not, because you've got crew chiefs sitting up on the box. We don't have Cole Pern anymore, but when you got minds like Cole Pern, Rodney Childers, Chad Knaus, when you got some of these genius minds up there that are strategizing a race, it's obviously not all about the driver there. It's not all about the driver when you've got a pit crew that can do a 4-tire change and an adjustment in 13 seconds. The guys that are working on the cars Friday and Saturdays during practice, it's a lot about the driver. When it's green flag racing, it's a lot about the driver. But when that yellow flag's out there, it's not necessarily about the driver.
Yeah, 100%. And so I'll pontificate again. I listened to Stone Cold's throwback episode today with Lane Johnson, who is all-pro left tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles. And he talked about all the different things he has to do during the week between the lifting and keeping weight on and nutrition. And it's like, we don't see that as football fans. Like, that's invisible to us. Yep. Just like pit practice and Alan Gustafson and Paul Wolf and all those guys you just mentioned, just reviewing throttle and brake traces after and trying to get them all figured out. So how do I need to set this car up? All we see is what happens when they practice, when they qualify, and when they race the cars. And there's so much else that goes on behind the scenes that make it a team sport. It's almost like they neuter the concept of a team sport because we don't get to see any of that.
Sure. Yep. That's where a network would be great, so that they could have stuff like this on there, like we can see that sort of behind the scenes thing, what's that show with the NFL on Showtime where they follow a team around for the whole year or whatever?
I don't know about that one because I dropped Showtime a while back, but I'm a religious watcher of Hard Knocks.
Okay, yeah, so if they were to do something like that, could you imagine if they followed, pick any team, for the whole year, and you could watch like a weekly thing, and you could see what they're looking at, when they're in the hauler, after practice, when you got 6 TV screens with just numbers on there, that are just numbers to me. You probably know a little bit, comprehend a little bit more about them than I'd be able to, but all that goes into, all right, we need to make a half-pound air adjustment, the amount of stuff that's coming out of these guys' minds is really, it's magnificent.
Yeah, especially now that they can't really test.
Yeah. Yeah.
And testing was super expensive. That was a really good bottom line decision NASCAR made because of how often teams were testing. And then they even eliminated, you can't even go to a non-NASCAR sanctioned track and test. You just can't do it at all.
Yep.
And that's an important piece to the conversation. And I just don't think enough people understand that, like Hendrick Motorsports, for instance, they supply pit crews for 4 Cup cars and 4 Xfinity cars, which means they have to have at least 2 backup crews. And how interesting would it be for us to see a crew chief bring in, just like they do in Hard Knocks, bring in a crew guy and be like, either try to pep him up or say, I'm sorry, but, we've got 12 development crews. You're our 12th best right front tire changer. And we got somebody waiting behind you to try to beat you. We're either going to cut you or you're going to have to step it up.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that'd be cool. That'd be cool to have an hour weekly special kind of thing on something like that. Absolutely.
Well, and it could be just like Hard Knocks. It could be 6 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely.
They could start it, in December.
Yeah.
And we could just watch how these guys do their thing and make sure you don't air it at the same time as the NFL for F-bomb's sake so that people will be able to watch it. Now, I know a ton of NASCAR fans don't give 2 cuss words about football, but there's a bunch of us that do.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got to play your market right.
Well, and we like to make those comparisons.
Sure.
Like, what's different between Tom Brady and Jimmy Johnson? And what's the same about Tom Brady and Jimmy Johnson? Well, it's really easy to compare and contrast those things because they do a lot of the same things.
Both from like their weekly, training and regiments from eating and bicycling and, like you said, we just expect to what we see on Sundays, and there's so much more that goes into these guys' week to make them a 7-time NASCAR champion and a 6-time Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's same thing with they finally came out with that concussion documentary with the doctor that I'll never remember his name because it's hard to say. And then they did the movie with Will Smith. And then immediately after that, Dale Jr.'s book was released. And you realize that, concussions isn't just a football thing.
No.
It's an every sport thing where you bang your head. I mean, there are some sports out there where you don't typically bang your head very much. Baseball, you typically don't. When you do, it's usually really bad. And even in soccer, they dealt with a lot of concussion problems, and the awareness was very slow to build. But that's all a part of how you produce a team that can win things. Is you have to deal with all these different little things: sports psychology, nutrition, how much you're working out, how much food you're putting in your body, what kind of food you're putting in your body. I think our sport would benefit from having access to more of that information.
Absolutely.
Especially since now that we know most of those guys on pit road are former college athletes.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, sir, I'm running a little empty here. What do you say we hit stop, get a refill, and pick things back up here in a second?
Sure.
All right. Fantastic. And we're back, but you guys didn't notice any difference there because I hit stop. So, Sherwin, what do you say we switch gears here? Let's talk about some driver changes and kind of where things might be headed over the next couple years.
Okay.
All right. Let's. Here are some of the bigger names that have made some driver changes. I'm sure you guys all know this, but just to set our topic agenda here. So Chris Buescher moves over to Roush Fenway, and Ricky Stenhouse moves from Roush Fenway over to JTG in kind of a switch flip-flop there. I think the biggest move, obviously, Matt DiBenedetto to the 21 Wood Brothers Racing. I'm very excited about that. I'm not sure it's a bold-ass prediction. He may not get a win, but I think Matt DiBenedetto is going to be out there competing for some top fives on a consistent basis at least. And I say that just because, for the last 3 years, DiBenedetto has had to do 1-year deals with different teams. So the fact that he's going to a new team, that's nothing new. He's used to that type of an off season. The car by definition should be better than leaving. Not criticizing or anything like that to Bob and the 95 team, but this car should be a little bit of an improvement that he's going into. And Matt had an amazing end to his year last year. So I am really excited to see what we get out of Matt D this year.
Yeah, I am too. I think you're right on all of those accounts. And certainly no belittlement to Bob. He's an extremely cool dude.
Absolutely.
And obviously has lots of aspirations for being at a high level competitor, but at the same time, good on the Wood brothers for identifying a talent that I think a lot of people have seen for a while now and thought, what if this guy really got in a good car? And I think when everybody saw that Blaney was going to that car, they're like, well, I'm not sure that car is really all that good. And then he goes out and wins Pocono.
Right.
So, that automatically catapulted them into being into, Blaney was already going to be in the Penske fold. It was just a matter of time. But getting all that extra support, that sort of changes the game. It changes what your perspective is. And we saw what DiBenedetto can do even when he's not in a great car. I mean, 6th place at Bristol. I don't have any other ones in the top of my head, but, that's...
He had I couldn't give you exact numbers, but he had his best career year with, I want to say, a good maybe somewhere between 8 and 10 top 10 finishes last year, which is something he's obviously never done before. So, and that's because things were starting to kind of, fall into place, and he was able to go out there and run.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, that change from Chevrolet over to Toyota for Levine was a really smart, savvy business decision because, I mean, I think even the Toyota execs would admit that they feel like they're still behind the 8 ball on the number of cars they have, especially after losing Furniture Row.
Well, yeah, they've got 5 cars, right?
Yeah,
5
essentially,
competitive cars.
Yeah, and we don't know yet how competitive the 95 is going to be. We just assume that it probably is going to be competitive since Christopher Bell's the one that's in it.
Yep. All right, let's see. Well, speaking of Christopher Bell, we got the 3 top dogs from the Xfinity Series moving up. Talked to Tyler Reddick a little bit ago. I'm excited about this rookie class just because, obviously they're not going to come out and pop off 8 wins apiece running out there with the likes of the stacked cup field that we already have. But I'm really curious. I think these guys spent a decent amount of time in the Xfinity Series. I don't think they were rushed up. I think they're all ready. It's awesome that they were all able to get rides the same year. So now it's a matter of, I think we talked about this at the end of last season, which one is stepping into the most well-prepared car? And if I'm answering that question, it's probably Cole Custer. But, things could shock us out of the 95, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cole Custer is probably in the best position because of a team that already has had some considerable success and they know how to build race cars. And we know Cole Custer can drive. We don't know yet what the Toyota situation is with Bob Levine and whether or not they can get up to speed in any kind of hurry with building chassis. Maybe they're just going to buy chassis from Gibbs, and that changes the ball game. But there's still all that hanging the body and the setup stuff that's got to happen. I'm a little concerned for Reddick because I don't know where RCR is.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And you look at, he's going into a car that, they moved Daniel Hemrick in for 1 year. And let him go. He's going to be running a full-time or a partial Xfinity schedule with Junior Motorsports, which is cool. At least he's going to be back into a car, just back in the Xfinity series. But, RCR, Roush, Petty, they've been pretty stagnant at trying to see who wants to kind of compete for the worst spot out there, not the best spot.
Well, and I mean, I think we did see one time last year when Bubba got, one of their RCR grade A chassis, he finished 8th. I can't remember the racetrack, but it was, hey, we're going to give you a good car. Go get us a good finish. And he did. So maybe they're on the rebound. I don't know. I'm not convinced that Austin has the ability to provide enough information for them to take the next step. I mean, we've seen Kenseth getting the 6 and then Newman getting the 6. And I mean, Newman ran okay, but he didn't run like Roush getting 5 cars in the playoffs for the very first time we ever had that thing.
Right.
So, I mean, what's the fall off? Like, why is Roush still, I mean, they're a middle team right now.
Yeah.
So is RCR in a lot of ways.
Well, and I got to think, if I'm Roush, if I'm RCR, if I'm Petty, how much, and this is where I kind of think we could get somewhat of a lame duck 2020 season, because how much, are they going to want to invest into this year to change and update the car for 1 year when they know that they've got, the new car coming in 2021. So, are they maybe going to come out guns a-blazing 2021? That's kind of where I'm kind of thinking this could be a same year for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, so I worry, for Chris Buescher a little bit in that respect, because you're 100% right. And this is one of the things I really liked, besides Denny Hamlin explaining about what the weight really means for these guys and who can go fast and where in the pack you can go fast. Is the concern is, he said this car is so much different, you basically are throwing all your inventory in the trash after this year. And if you don't have a 2021 car built by May, you're already behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, the amount of work and thrashing that's going to be done at these race shops over this year is really something that would be fun to watch in a Hard Knock special, too, because these guys are going to be working a lot of shifts, working on the 2020 car and building new cars for 2021.
Yeah, well, we saw that in 2007 when they had to run the winged car with the new splitter, but they ran it 8 races maybe.
Yeah.
And there were some teams that really got a handle on it, namely, I think, Hendrick.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of teams that were just, those 8 races, they were just out to lunch. Jimmy
took a liking to that new one.
Yeah. He did okay.
Yeah, he did all right. He did okay. And speaking of the new car, we talked about it a little bit ago when we weren't recording. What does this new car mean for some of our veteran drivers? We're already losing Jimmy Johnson this year. Wouldn't be surprised if someone else doesn't come back next year. Kurt Busch has been iconic for signing 1-year deals as of late, but he's rumored to be signed through 21. Kevin Harvick's through 21. Clint Boyer's had a rough go last couple years. Could this be his last year? We really could be losing a few drivers over the next few years.
Yeah, and the only thing I would say about that is, just like we talk about stick and ball a lot, because you and I are both big fans of a lot of stick and ball stuff. You don't fire somebody or not re-sign somebody unless you already have the heir apparent identified. So, I mean, hell, I'll even lean on Kansian a little bit here, because I think he may be right that we might see Larson make a team change. He thinks he might be going to Clint's ride. I think he might be going to Jimmy Johnson's ride. But the thing is, when those guys leave, we have to have people behind them to move up. And who are they? like the only one I can think of offhand, and I'm sure I hold bias because I'm a fan, but like Ross Chastain to me looks like the only guy that's going to run Xfinity that is like the next thing. Like Allgaier's never coming back to Cup.
Yeah,
Hemrick
I'm with you there.
Yeah, Hemrick may have a shot to get back, but getting demoted is typically not a death sentence, but because a lot of guys have made a really good career out of being Xfinity racers, but he doesn't even have a full-time ride. He's running that R&D car.
Yep.
And, I just don't know. I just don't know who's going to fill those spots, which is why I think we'll see those guys you just mentioned will certainly fulfill their 2021 contracts. But it wouldn't shock me a bit if that was it, because they get in that car and go, what is this thing?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think they get in it to be able, because they're veteran guys, they know how to give information back. I think they run it for a year to give valuable information to be able to set it up for, the next up and coming in 2022.
Well, and I'm really curious to see what happens with Blaney, because he's on the last year of his deal, and I don't think he's having the kind of success that he wants to have. And there are opportunities available. Like, the 48 car we know is empty.
Yes.
It's empty for 2021.
Yes.
Somebody's getting in that car. And if I'm the one writing the checks and trying to do the negotiations, if I'm Rick, I'm either picking Larson if I can pry him away, or I'm picking Blaney because Blaney just says, I don't think I want to go back to Penske. And I don't know. He's never indicated that he had desire to leave Penske. He's always been very loyal to Roger. But, you want one of those young guys that appears like he can win races. Blaney's won, 3 races now?
Yeah. Pocono
and Talladega and the Roval. And, and Larson's got the 6 wins. So, if I'm Rick, I'm knocking on both of those doors, and I'm knocking hard. Yeah. And I got a contract in hand says, this is what I'm going to pay you, and this is how long I'm going to pay you for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you just see what happens from there.
I would think Chip would fight pretty hard, but I could be dead wrong. But
Cansey and I have hand fought about that a lot, because Larson has always been so loyal to Chip, because Chip gave him a ride when he didn't have a sponsor,
right? Which
is hard to do when you're going into Cup. And not only that, but getting in a car that actually ran kind of, pretty well. Montoya won the 1 race, but he probably should have about 3 Brickyard 400 wins that just didn't pan out.
Yep. Absolutely.
So,
we look at other couple guys here. Daniel Suarez going from the powerhouse of Stuart Haas to Gaunt Brothers Racing. The good and the bad, at least he's got a ride. But man, when you look at some of these guys that have had to take these one-off 1-year deals, you look at the struggle that Clint Boyer had when he had to wait for Stewart for a year. That's a struggle, especially when you've had a taste of the good life. And not to say that these guys aren't going to work their asses off, because that they will. But man, that's going to be a struggle for Suarez this year.
Well, it's psychologically problematic, because those guys are used to running up front.
Yep.
And like you said, Clint with Finch, I think it was Finch or Harry Scott, whichever that car ended up being. They were running like shit.
Yep.
And you could see it all over Clint's face. He was not a happy camper. He was not enjoying what he was doing. Yep. We saw that, and this is no shot at Bob at all, but we saw that with Casey Kane in the garage at Michigan.
Yeah.
He was so frustrated with that car having absolutely no performance in it. And I think it wears on you. Now, ultimately, Casey obviously had the medical condition that forced him out of the sport, but I got to believe that psychological piece of that puzzle was also just as taxing.
Absolutely. Let's see here. What else we got? So we lost a couple drivers this year. Paul Menard, David Reagan, and Matt Tift due to medical reasons. You mentioned a little bit ago, Junior, the concussions and all that. Matt Tift, with medical conditions as well. It's a bummer. I really like Matt. He's become a good friend of the show over the last couple of years. But out of those three, Paul Menard, obviously kind of like the shocker there. It was always, you expected to see Paul Menard out in that Menard's, bright ass yellow car, neon green, whatever you want to call it, year in, year out, competing for a 15th place finish.
So obviously I don't know Paul Menard. I don't know his dad. I don't know his family. My guess is Roger and the Wood brothers went to him and asked him, do you really want to keep doing this?
Yeah.
And he probably told his dad, I want you to keep doing this, but I'm ready to be done.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, he was in it for what? 10 years at least? 8 to 10, somewhere around there.
16.
16. Okay.
He made his first start in 2003.
One win, right? The Brickyard. That's
one
gotta be a
win
struggle.
at the Brick.
That's that, like you said a little bit ago, the psychological aspect. Like, it'd be one thing if he was going out there, at least having shots at it. But he never really had shots at it.
Well, and he never really led laps.
No,
and that's sort of the indicator. They talk about this a lot, and I know you've heard it because you've been a fan of this sport as long as I have. Is the way you get top fives is to run top 10 every week.
Yep.
The way you get wins is to run top 5 every week. And if you're not top 5 every week, you're looking at the writing on the wall, going, "We can't win. We're just not. It's not going to happen."
Yeah. Yep. No, I'm with you there. All right. That was all that I got. Anything else you want to add? Driver, sport, NASCAR, football, Chiefs, anything else you want to do to close this bad boy out?
All I'll say is congratulations to Clint and his Chiefs.
He had a good time.
I told my mom, my dad grew up in the same town that Jeff Gordon's from, Vallejo, California. So he grew up a San Francisco fan. And I told my mom, I said, well, I'll be really happy for Dad, if San Francisco gets another one. But, that Patrick Mahomes is a really fun player to watch.
He is definitely fun to watch. It's fun to have on your fantasy league too.
I bet.
All right, man. Well, let's wrap this thing up. Lap Traffic Nation, that is going to do it for episode 166. Great to be back behind the mic. Excited to kick things off here with season 4. Go sign up for fantasy. Check it out on the website, thelaptrafficpodcast.com. Click the fantasy link. All the info's there, or just shoot me an email, fantasylaptraffic@gmail.com. Follow on Twitter @laptrafficpc. Huge thanks to Tyler Reddick, Aaron Studwell, and of course Andrew Sherwin. Sherwin, what do you guys got going on, and where can everyone follow you at?
Well, we're obviously we're over at PETM Podcast. I'm at Pregame Engineer, and Rusty's at Tailgate Mayor, and we got a little dirt racer kind of on the hook for next week. I think everybody's familiar with. We'll announce it when we're for sure it's locked in.
Excellent. Awesome. All right, Lap Traffic Nation, don't get caught chasing the lucky dog. Tune in each and every week to the Lap Traffic Podcast. See ya.
Skoo!